The first sign that something was off wasn't the man waiting outside. It was Evelyn's dress. She never dressed up for me anymore. That was the first thing I noticed, how the deep red fabric clung to her in a way that felt deliberate. How her makeup was just a little too perfect. How she moved with an energy I hadn't seen in years. She was glowing, and not because of me. I was sitting at the dining table, absently pushing my fork around my plate, when she walked past me toward the door. She didn't even glance at me, just reached for her coat, like she had somewhere better to be. "Where are you going?" I asked, setting my fork down. Evelyn paused her fingers, still gripping the coat rack out. She said simply, out. That single word had more weight than anything she'd said to me in months with who I pressed. She sighed, finally, turning to face me, like I was some needy inconvenience. "His name is Nolan." I frowned. "I don't know any Nolan." "You don't need to," she said. Slipping her arms into her coat, a slow, uneasy feeling crawled up my spine. "Evelyn," I said carefully, "are you seriously telling me you're going on a date?" She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Don't be ridiculous." But then she reached for her purse, and that's when I heard it. The sound of footsteps outside. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. I strode toward the window, pushing the curtain aside just enough to see, and there he was, a man I'd never seen before. Standing at the edge of our driveway, hands in his pockets. A relaxed smirk on his face. He wasn't just picking her up, he was waiting for her. Heard something in my stomach. "Twisted, Evelyn," I said again, my voice lower this time. She exhaled sharply, like I was exhausting her. "I told you, I'm going out." I turned back to her with him. She looked at me, unimpressed. "Yes." The bluntness of it knocked the breath from my lungs. I searched her face for hesitation, for guilt. Anything to suggest this wasn't exactly what it looked like, but there was nothing, just mild annoyance, like I was keeping her wrong. Something important. "Are you serious?" I asked Evelyn. Let out another sigh, rubbing her temple look. "Callum, I didn't want to have this conversation tonight. I was hoping you'd be mature enough to handle it." I almost laughed. "Handle what this?" She gestured vaguely between us. "The fact that I need more than this." She said it like this. Our life, our marriage, me wasn't enough for her anymore. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what was happening. "You're cheating on me." "Don't be so dramatic," she said. "Then, what would you call it?" Evelyn grabbed her purse and smoothed down her dress, exploring my options. The words hit me like a slap. "Exploring your—" I cut myself off my hands, balling into fists at my sides. "You're my wife, Evelyn, for now," she said, checking her phone. That was it, the moment I realized I had already lost her. She had checked out of our marriage long before this conversation. I just hadn't noticed. Evelyn moved toward the door. But I stepped in front of it. "Move," she said flatly. "No," I said. She lifted an eyebrow. "I wasn't asking. You can't just—" I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. "Do you even hear yourself? You're walking out of our home to his car like this is normal." Evelyn crossed her arms. "It's normal for people who aren't stuck in the past." I clenched my jaw. "You're my wife." She tilted her head, considering maybe, but tonight I'm his. And with that, she pushed past me, opened the door, and walked straight into another man's waiting arms. I stood frozen in the doorway, gripping the frame as I watched my wife slip into his car. Without a second glance, and I realized I wasn't losing her. I had already lost her. The house felt hollow without her. The moment the car disappeared down the street, I stood in the doorway, gripping the frame like it was the only thing keeping me upright. The cold air from outside seeped in, wrapping around me, but I barely noticed my mind was spinning. Caught somewhere between disbelief and something dangerously close to rage, I closed the door slowly, like I was trying to contain the mess she had just made. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself that this wasn't real, that she'd come back and tell me it was some kind of twisted joke, I knew better. Evelyn had left and she wasn't looking back. I paced the length of the living room, my mind racing with questions I didn't have answers to. Had she been planning this for weeks? Months? How long had she been sneaking around, making excuses, acting like I was the fool. In some game, she thought she had already won. My phone was on the coffee table. I picked it up, hesitated, then opened our messages. There was nothing in them that hinted at this. No confessions, no warnings. Just the norm. Normal everyday exchanges between a husband and wife. Me, hey, don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning on your way home. Evelyn got at me. What do you want for dinner tonight, Evelyn? Not hungry. Late meeting. Late meeting. I should have caught it then. My grip tightened around the phone. My heart pounded against my ribs as something dare. Kay crept into my thoughts. Was this really the first time? Or had she been walking out that door for a long time? While I sat here, blind and comfortable, the idea burned in my chest. I needed to get out of the house. I grabbed my keys and jacket, not entirely sure where I was going, only knowing I couldn't sit here and pretend everything was fine. My car rumbled to life, the sound cutting through the silence of the empty driveway. As I backed out, my eyes flicked to the spot where Gregor's car had been. The ghost of it lingered there. Mocking me, I pulled onto the road, driving aimlessly, my hands gripping the wheel. So tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't have a destination, just a desperate need to move. The thought of Evelyn laughing with him, touching him, looking at him. The way she used to look at me sent a wave of nausea rolling through me. I needed to see it. The realization hit me like a punch. I couldn't just sit here and wonder. I needed to know. I opened her location on my phone, and there it was. Small blinking of betrayal wrapped in pixels. A restaurant, a nice one. The kind we hadn't been to in years. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my lips. She had told me we needed to save money, that we should stop going out so much, that home-cooked meals were better. But here she was, sitting in a dimly lit booth, drinking overpriced wine with another man. I shouldn't have gone. I should have turned around. Let her make her choice. Let her believe I was too broken to react. But something inside me wouldn't let me. 15 minutes later, I was parked across the street from the restaurant. Through the wide glass windows, I saw them. Evelyn was leaning forward, her chin resting on her hand, her eyes locked onto Gregor, like he was the most fascinating person in the world. She was smiling, laughing, even a sound. I hadn't heard in months. I felt like I had been erased, like I had already disappeared from her life. And she was just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. My hands curled into fists. This wasn't just a date. It was a testament, and suddenly, I wasn't sure if I was ready for what came next. I should have left. I should have turned the key, driven back home, and let Evelyn have whatever fantasy she was chasing. But I didn't. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, watching through the rain-speckled windshield as my wife smiled at another man. Like I had never existed. It wasn't the kind of smile you give a friend, or even someone you're just getting to know. This was intimate teasing, full of something she hadn't shown me in years. The way she leaned in, the way she let him brush a stray hair from her face. It made my stomach churn. That used to be me. That used to be my place. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, my breath coming faster than it should. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way I expected to be. I was numb, detached, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life, and I already knew how it ended. She had chosen. But did she think I would just sit back and let her? I forced myself to take a breath, to steady my hands if I walked into that restaurant. What would I even say that I had caught her? That I had proof of what she hadn't even tried to hide? No, that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. I pushed open my car door, stepping out into the cold evening air. A part of me hoped she would look up, that her eyes would find mine through the window, and that she would show some flicker of guilt, some recognition that I was still here, that I wasn't just a shadow in the life she had already left behind. But she never looked. Not once. I walked toward the restaurant entrance, keeping my movements slow, deliberate. I wasn't crashing this date I was observing. I wanted to see how far she would go when she thought no one was watching inside. The air was thick with the smell of steak and expensive wine couples, filled the dimly lit booths, the sound of soft jazz playing overhead. I moved carefully, keeping myself in the shadows, slipping into an empty bar seat where I had the perfect view of their table without being noticed. Evelyn was talking, her hands moving as she spoke, her face alive, in a way that had been missing for years. Gregor was watching her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, nodding, smiling, leaning in, just enough to show that he knew exactly what he was doing. And then I saw it, his hand on her knee. She didn't move away. She didn't hesitate. She placed her own hand over his, locking her fingers with his. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I swallowed hard. So this was it. The confirmation I'd been waiting for. The moment I could no longer lie to myself. My wife wasn't just exploring her options, she was already gone. The bartender approached, asking if I wanted a drink. I waved him off my mind too, tangled to care about anything but the scene in front of me. What was I supposed to do? Make a scene, confront her. Here in front of everyone. What would that accomplish? I wanted her to feel something, to realize the weight of what she was doing. But she was laughing, not a nervous laugh, not one filled with hesitation, a real genuine laugh, like she hadn't laughed in years. And suddenly I wasn't sure what hurt. More the fact that she was cheating, or the fact that she was happy. I sat there for another 10 minutes, watching a version of my wife I hadn't seen in forever, a version that wasn't mine anymore. And then before I could stop myself, I did something I never thought I would do. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of them, of their intertwined hands, of her smile proof. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't the end, this was just the beginning. I drove home in silence, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but suffocating, the kind that crawls under your skin and latches onto your thoughts, like a parasite. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to, my knuckles white. But I barely noticed. The only thing I saw was that image burned into my mind. Evelyn laughing. Her hand on his. Her whole body, leaning into him like she had never belonged to me. I should have felt rage. I should have been consumed by its screaming, breaking things, demanding an explanation that I already knew. Wouldn't change anything, but I wasn't angry. I was empty for the past few years. I had been holding on to a ghost, the version of Evelyn that had once loved me, that had chosen me, that had built a life with me. I had convinced myself that she was still in there somewhere, that if I just tried harder, if I just became more of what she needed, she would come back to me. But tonight, sitting across the street from that restaurant, I finally saw the truth. She wasn't coming back. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house felt foreign, like it wasn't mine anymore. Like I was just visiting a place where someone else had lived, where memories were carved into the walls but had long since faded. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, and for the first time, I truly understood what loneliness. This felt like the smell of her perfume still lingered in the air. The faint sound of the clock ticking in the hallway was deafening. I walked into the kitchen, half expecting to see her there, cooking or pouring herself a glass of wine. But the space was empty, just like the rest of the house. I sat at the dining table staring at nothing, my mind replaying every moment of the night in perfect clarity. The way she had ignored me, the way she had walked past me without hesitation, the way she had sat across from him, touched him, given him all the pieces of her she had refused to give me. And then almost absent-mindedly, I pulled out my phone. The picture was still there. A single frame capturing the exact moment my marriage died. Her fingers laced with his, her lips curled in a smile that wasn't for me. A snapshot of a life she had already started building without me. I stared at it for a long time. I could delete it, pretend I had never seen it. Go to bed and wake up in the morning like nothing had changed, but something had, and no amount of pretending would make the go away without thinking. I tapped on our messages for a moment. I just hovered there, my thumb resting over the keyboard, my thoughts. Tangled, what was I supposed to say that I knew? That I had seen everything, that I had been sitting in the same damn restaurant invisible to her, while she threw away years of our life like it was nothing. Then, before I could stop myself, I typed, "I hope he was worth it." I stared at the word words for a long time, then, with a deep breath, I had sent the message delivered instantly, no read receipt, no response, just silence. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand over my face, exhaling slowly. Maybe she wouldn't reply. Maybe she would see it, roll her eyes, and go back to whatever fantasy she was living in. Or maybe she would feel something. I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. An apology, an explanation, revenge. None of it would change the fact that she had already left me long before tonight. I stood up my OD heavy with exhaustion, and made my way to the bedroom. It still smelled like her. The sheets, the pillows, even the air itself carried the ghost of her presence. I climbed into bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that I knew wouldn't come. Then, just as I was starting to drift into the restless haze of my thoughts, my phone buzzed a single message from Evelyn. "You don't understand." I stared at it. My pulse quickened, my mind racing with possibilities. But before I could type a response, another message appeared. "We need to talk." I didn't sleep. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Not the Evelyn I had loved, but the one I had watched across that restaurant looking at another man. Like I had never existed. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind tangled in a storm of questions. I wasn't sure I wanted answers to her message. Sat on my phone like a ticking bomb. "You don't understand." Understand what that she had checked out of our marriage a long time ago, that I was nothing more than a leftover piece of her past, while she built a new future with someone else. I had spent years trying to understand her, to meet her halfway, to be the husband she needed me to be, and in the end it hadn't mattered. Her second message came, not long after "We need to talk." I didn't respond, not at first. Let her wonder. For once, let her sit in the silence and think about what she had done. Maybe she expected me to beg to ask her to come home, to be the weak, predictable man she had grown tired of. But I wasn't going to play that role anymore by morning. My body felt like it had been run through a grinder. My muscles ached, my head pounded, and my chest was hollow. The house felt different now, like a place I no longer belonged. Every room carried echoes of her perfume lingering in the air, her hairbrush still on the bathroom counter, the half-empty coffee mug she had left in the sink. The night before, I moved through the house in a daze. Making coffee, I didn't want staring at my phone without really seeing. "Tea then at 8:32, she called. I let it ring. She called again and again by the fourth time. Something inside me snapped. I answered, my voice rough from exhaustion. What, for a moment, there was silence. Maybe she hadn't expected me to pick up. Maybe she had prepared herself for voicemail, rehearsed some speech she thought would smooth everything over. Then she exhaled a slow, shaky breath. Hearing her say, "My name," did something to me. It felt foreign now, like it belonged to someone else. Like I wasn't the same man she had once said it to with "love you," what I asked, my voice flat. She hesitated. "Can we meet?" I almost laughed. Meet as if we were business partners, settling a dispute, as if last night hadn't happened, as if she hadn't walked out of our home and into another man's arms. Like I didn't matter. No, I said, "Callum, you wanted this." Evelyn, don't act surprised now, her breath hitched. "You don't even know the full story." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "The full story? You mean the part where you held his hand, or the part where you laughed like you were on the best date of your life?" Silence. I let it stretch between us. let her sit in the weight of it. Then, finally, she spoke. "It's not what you think." A bitter chuckle escaped me. "Oh, that's original, please," she whispered. "Just meet me." I should have said no. I should have told her to go to hell, to figure out her mess without dragging me back into it. But a part of me, the part that still wanted answers, that still hadn't fully let go, said something else. "Fine," I muttered. 1 hour, our usual spot. I hung up before she could say another word. The coffee shop was almost empty when I arrived. It was one of those places we used to go when we were first dating. Back when life was simple before everything became complicated. The thought made me sick. Now, Evelyn was already there. Sitting by the window, her hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched when she saw me. Her face lit up with something close to relief. But I didn't return it. I took the seat across from her, arms crossed. Waiting, she studied me for a long moment, like she was searching for something in my expression. "You look exhausted?" "Yeah, well, finding out your wife has a boyfriend does that to you?" She flinched, then looked down at her coffee. "It's not like that." I scoffed, then, "Tell me." "Evelyn, what is it like?" She swallowed hard. I didn't plan for this to happen. "Oh, that makes it so much better," I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, frustration flickering in them. "Can you just let me explain?" I sat back, arms still crossed. "Go ahead, explain." She took a deep breath. Gregor's different. He makes me feel alive again. Something cold settled in my stomach, and I don't. She winced. "It's not that simple." "It is to me." She exhaled, shaking her head. "I felt lost for a long time. Callum and I tried to ignore it. I did, but something was missing, and when I met Gregor, I held up a hand. Stop, just stop. Because I didn't need to hear this. I didn't need to sit across from the woman I had given everything to. And listen to her tell me that I wasn't enough. Why are we even here?" "Evelyn," I asked, my voice suddenly tired. "What do you want from me?" She hesitated. "I don't know." I let out a dry laugh. "Wow, that's really something. She faltered. "I don't want to lose you completely." I froze. The sheer audacity of it knocked the breath from my lungs. "You don't want to lose me?" I repeated slowly, my voice dangerously quiet. "Evelyn, you lost me the second you got into his car." She looked like she wanted to argue, to say something that would make this easier for her, but she didn't, because she knew I was right. I stood up, pushing the chair back. "I hope he makes you happy, Callum." I walked out before she could finish. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing after her. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't have to. The air outside, the cafe felt different. Maybe it was the weight of everything that had just happened. Or maybe it was the realization that I was finally seeing Evelyn for who she really was. Either way, I stood there for a long moment, staring at my reflection in the window, watching her still sitting inside hands, wrapped around a coffee cup she never touched. She looked like a stranger for years. I had been holding on to a version of her that no longer existed. The woman I had married, the one who used to laugh at my stupid jokes, who used to hold my hand just because she wanted to, who used to look at me like I was the only person in the world. She was gone. I had been clinging to the ghost of our past, convincing myself that if I just tried hard enough, I could bring her back. But ghosts don't come back, and Evelyn. She had been gone long before she ever walked out that door. I didn't go home right away. Couldn't. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum of a life that had already ended. So, instead, I drove no destination. No plan, just the hum of the engine and the blur of streetlights passing by. I thought about all the times I had ignored the signs, the late nights, the work to rips. The way she had slowly pulled away without ever saying a word. Had she ever really loved me? Or had I just been convenient? The question burned in the back of my mind. But I already knew the answer. At some point, I ended up parked outside my best friend's house. Tobias, he was the kind of guy who always had an answer for everything, whether you wanted to hear it or not. And right now, I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. I knocked twice before he swung the door open, blinking at me like he wasn't sure if I was real. Callum, yeah, my voice was rough, like I hadn't spoken in hours. His eyes flicked to my face, taking in whatever mess he saw there. Then he stepped aside. Come in. I walked in the familiar smell of beer and takeout hitting me immediately. His apartment was the same as it always was. Comfortable, slightly chaotic. The kind of place where nothing felt out of place. Because everything was... He shut the door behind me, then crossed his arms. You look like hell. I let out a short, bitter laugh. I feel worse. He studied me for a second before nodding toward the couch. Sit, talk. I dropped onto the couch, running a hand through my hair. She's been cheating to buy. IAS didn't look surprised, not even a little. Yeah, I figured. I snapped my head up. What, Heidi running a hand over his face? I didn't have proof, man. But I saw things, the way she acted, the way she treated you. She was never present. It was like she was waiting for an excuse to leave a slow, sinking feeling. Settled in my stomach, and you didn't tell me he looked at me. His expression unreadable, would you have believed me? I opened my mouth ready to argue, but then I stopped because he was right. I had spent so much time making excuses for her, convincing myself that if I just gave her space, if I just held on a little longer, things would go back to how they used to be. But they never would. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. She wanted to meet. Said, I didn't understand. Tobias snorted. Yeah, understand what that... She's a selfish pea. Ice, if I cut him off with a shake of my head. She said she doesn't want to lose me completely. He stared at me. Then, very calmly, he reached for the beer on the table, took a long sip, and said, That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. Yeah, pretty much. She walks out, cheats on you, rubs it in your face, and now she doesn't want to lose you. He leaned back, shaking his head. Callum, that's not love, that's control. She wants to keep you on the hook, while she does whatever the hell she wants. I knew that deep down. I had always known that. But hearing it out loud made it feel real in a way I hadn't been ready for. Tobias studied me for a second, then asked, So what are you going to do? I exhaled, leaning back against the couch. I don't know. Here's an idea. He sat forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Don't give her what she wants. I frowned. What do you mean? She wants to keep you in her life, right? Keep you as the safety net, the backup plan. Don't let her. He gestured vaguely. See? You'd her off. Take your life back. Hell, change the locks while you're at it. I rubbed a hand over my face. It's not that simple. Yeah, it is. He gave me a look. You think she hesitated before screwing around behind your back? You think she sat there agonizing over whether or not it was the right thing to do? No, she did what she wanted, and now you need to do what you want for the first time in weeks, maybe months. I actually let myself consider that. What if I stopped caring? What if I stopped waiting for her to decide what she wanted and started deciding for myself? I had spent so much time fighting for a marriage that only one of us had been holding on to. Maybe it was time to let go. I stood up. I need to go home. Tobias raised an eyebrow. You good? Not yet. I grabbed my keys. But I will be. As I drove back, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to chase after her. Evelyn had made her choice, and now I was making mine. I pulled into the driveway, gripping the steering wheel as I stare. D at the house that no longer felt like mine. The lights were still off the same way I had left them. But something felt different. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the realization that I had spent so long trying to hold on to something that had already slipped through my fingers. I stepped out of the car, my footsteps heavy. As I walked toward the front door, my keys jingled in my hand. But just as I reached for the lock, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another message from Evelyn, another attempt to explain the unexplainable, but it wasn't her, it was my mother. I hesitated before answering. She was the last person I wanted to talk to right now, Not because I didn't love her, but because she would hear it in my voice. The weight, the exhaustion, the unraveling of everything I had built. Still, I answered, "Hey, Mom!" The line was quiet for a moment before she spoke. Her voice gentle. "You okay, sweetheart?" I closed my eyes. She already knew I hadn't told her, but she knew no. I admitted not really. Another pause, then, "Do you want to talk about it?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to pretend that I had it all under control, but the truth was I didn't, and for once, I didn't have the energy to lie. "She's cheating." I said the words, tasting foreign in my mouth. I saw her. She didn't even try to hide it. A sharp inhale from the other end of the line. "Oh, Callum." I sat down on the front steps, running a hand through my hair. She said she doesn't want to lose me completely, that she wants me in her life. I laughed, but it was hollow. Like, I'm supposed to just stick around while she does whatever she wants. My mother was quiet for a long moment. Then, she said something I hadn't expected. "Do you remember when you were little and you had that old toy truck?" I frowned. "What, the red one? You loved it so much that even when the wheels broke, you kept trying to fix it. You refused to let it go, even when it didn't work anymore." I blinked the memory, rushing back that stupid truck I had carried it everywhere, even after it was no thing more than a shell of what it used to be. She continued, her voice steady. "I remember one day your father sat you down and said, 'Callum, sometimes things break in a way that can't be fixed. And when that happens, holding on to them only hurts you more.'" I swallowed hard, staring at the cracks in the pavement beneath my feet. "She's broken this, honey," my mother said gently, "and you can't fix it alone." Tears burned the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I know," I whispered, and for the first time, I really did. The house was cold when I stepped inside, but I barely noticed my body moved on autopilot. Walking through the darkened rooms, past the framed pictures that suddenly felt like artifacts from another life. I stopped in the hallway, staring at the wedding photo hanging on the wall. Evelyn was smiling, her arms wrapped around me, her eyes full of something that had long since disappeared. I reached out my fingers, brushing over the glass. Then, without thinking, I pulled it off the wall for a moment. I just held it, then, slowly, I turned it over, opened the back, and slid the photo out. The empty frame felt lighter in my hands. I placed it face down on the console table and walked away in the bedroom. Her side of the closet was still full. Dresses, jackets, neatly lined up shoes. Evidence that she still lived here. Evidence that she still had one foot in our life. Even as she strayed into another. I stared at it for a long time. Then I grabbed a box. I didn't throw things, I didn't destroy them. I just started packing dress after dress, shoes, scarves, every piece of her that I had once cherished. Every reminder of her presence in this house. By the time I was done, the closet felt different, lighter, like I could finally breathe. And then I saw it, a small velvet box, tucked away in the corner. My breath caught in my throat as I picked it up, my fingers trembling as I flipped it open. The necklace I'd bought it for her anniversary last year, a delicate silver chain with a small sapphire pendant, her birthstone. I had spent weeks looking for the perfect one. Something meaningful, something that showed her how much she still meant to me. She had worn it exactly once. And now it sat here forgotten, collecting dust, like the love she had thrown away. I clenched my jaw, then snapped the box shut. It was time. The next morning, Evelyn came home. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when I heard the front door open. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she walked in. Pausing when she saw me for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed, setting her purse down. "Callum." I took a slow sip of coffee morning. She frowned, shifting her weight. "We need to talk." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Go ahead." She hesitated before sitting down. She looked tired. Her makeup smudged her hair, slightly disheveled. I wondered if Gregor had dropped her off. She folded her hands on the table. "I don't want to fight." "Neither do I," I said calmly. She exhaled. "I know you're hurt." I tilted my head. Do you, she flink? He'd but pressed on. I made a mistake. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. She bit her lip, choosing her next words carefully. I don't want to lose you, Callum. I know I've hurt you, but I cut her off with a small shake of my head. Evelyn, she stopped. I held her gaze. You already did her breath. Hitched her fingers tightening around each other. But I pushed the small box across the table. The one with the necklace she had never cared about. She looked down at it, confused. What is this? A reminder, I said quietly, of everything you've thrown away. She stared at it, then at me. Her lower lip trembled slightly, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. I stood up, grabbing my keys. I packed your things, I said, nodding toward the boxes stacked neatly in the corner. Take whatever else you need, but after today, I don't want to see you here again. She blinked. Callum. No, I said firmly. You made your choice now. I'm making mine. She swallowed hard, her hands shaking as she reached for the box. So that's it. I met her gaze, one lay. Same time. That's it? Then I walked out the door, leaving her behind. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I walked out that door, and for the first time in years, I didn't look back. The weight on my chest, the suffocating pressure that had been crushing me for so long, was finally gone. I had spent so much time chasing after something that had died long before I ever realized it. But now I was free. I got into my car and just drove no destination, no plan, just me, the open road, and the realization that my life wasn't over, it was just beginning. I don't know how long I drove, but at some point I found myself parked at the edge of a quiet lake. Just outside of town, the water was still reflecting the golden hues of the morning sun, and for the first time, in what felt like forever, I could actually breathe. I stepped out of the car feeling the crisp air against my skin, and laughed, really laughed. It wasn't the bitter, hollow sound I had grown used to. It was real because standing there, watching the Sioux rise over the water, I realized something I had been afraid of losing. Evelyn, afraid of being alone, afraid that without her, my life would fall apart. But I wasn't falling apart, I was rebuilding my phone. Buzzed in my pocket a message from Tobias. Tobias, you okay? I smiled and typed back, me better than I've been in years. Because it was true that night, I packed up the rest of Evelyn's things, changed the locks, and for the first time in forever, I felt like I was taking my life back, no more. Waiting, no more. Hoping for something that was never going to happen. The next few weeks weren't easy. There were moments when the loneliness crept in, when the silence of the house felt deafening. But every time I felt myself slipping into the past, I reminded myself, I deserved better. I started going to the gym again. I reconnected with old friends. I took a promotion at work that I had been too afraid to accept. Before I rediscovered the things that made me happy, things that had nothing to do with Evelyn, and then on evening, something unexpected happened. I was at a bookstore, lost in the pages of a novel, when I heard a soft voice say, "You have good taste." I looked up and there she was. Not Evelyn. Someone knew her name was Marrera. She had kind eyes, a bright smile, and a way of looking at me that didn't make me feel like a backup plan. We started talking, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I thought I had lost. Forever. Hope. A few months later, I found myself sitting by that same lake, watching the sunset, only this time. I wasn't alone. Mara sat beside me, her fingers lightly rushing against mine. She didn't know everything about my past yet, and she didn't need to, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trapped in the past. I was looking forward, and as I sat there feeling the warmth of her hand in mine, I realized something important. Losing Evelyn wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning of a better one.